Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Corner podcast, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Brien. Justin is an inspirational speaker, a life coach, and a mental health advocate who has taken his own experience with mental demons and translated it into defeating the stigma around mental health for others. Justin was so fun to talk to, and I want to thank him again for coming on and having this discussion with me. Now, before we get started here, guys, you know the drill. If you're listening, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on that podcast platform. Share with someone who might want to hear this episode. It's a really great one, and I can't wait for you to listen. I'll talk to y'all very soon. The sun is shining today. Get some vitamin D, baby. Peace. Justin, thank you so much for joining me today, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
So before we get too into anything, I wanted to get to know you a little bit better. So going all the way back, where does kind of your journey with mental health start?
Oh, man. Well, from learning what I know now, going through depression and anxiety and ADHD and, learning more about it, I can actually look back now and realize that I kind of battled with mental health for my whole life. I was diagnosed with clinical depression, social and general anxiety. I have ADHD. Those are all diagnosed between 28 and 30 years old. So I'm 36 now, but I dealt with that for most of my life. But I also I had some head traumas and post-concussive syndrome. So that kind of like led me down the path of, look, I can use alcohol and drugs to cope. But as a kid, I had very low self-worth and low self-esteem. Self-confidence was pretty low. I always compared myself to other people and I wanted to be other people. And now that I look back on it, I understand it now. So I always wanted to be somebody else but me.
Mm-hmm.
I had good friends and stuff like that. I got picked on a little bit, but I was little and I had a little bit of a mouth. So, some of it was warranted, but I never wanted to be me. And, once I got out of high school, I didn't drink or do drugs or anything in high school. I drank a little bit in high school, but not much. I'd go to the parties and I'd take a 4-pack of Mr. Mike's, or not Mr. Mike's, Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Yep.
And a red Solo cup, so nobody knew I was drinking, and I'd have 2 of them and be drunk. But then, I moved away for hockey, and that's when I really started to drink. I'm living in a billet house, so we actually had pretty much our own place in an apartment. And right then and there, I started drinking, and I realized it gave me false confidence. It gave me this false sense of, of I'm the man, I'm funny, and I like who it made me ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from barely drinking to an alcoholic fairly quick. Like by the time I moved to Vancouver to bartend, I was basically a full-blown alcoholic. I was drinking every single day. I ended up moving downtown Vancouver, bartending, and every night I was out and drinking. Like every single night, I would close up the bar as fast as I can so I could get for power hour at the bar, get as drunk as I can. Then I'd go home and I'd probably order a bottle, right? The dial, the bottle, and drink by myself. And then I ended up at 24. I smoked marijuana when I was 21, but I don't really count that. But at 24, I did cocaine for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And my buddy told me the worst thing he probably could have said to me. And, a lot of people aren't going to think it's bad, but he said to me, he's like, man, you were funny last night. And I'm like, oh. So for a guy like me who's using alcohol for confidence, I'm like, oh, well, now I have alcohol for confidence. I can use cocaine or just drug to be funny. So I started to come up with almost like an algorithm to, I'd have this many drinks before I left my house because it would help me deal with anxiety. Right. And I would have this many drinks to talk to this girl. I'd have this many drinks to go on the dance floor. And then by the end of the night, I'm blackout drunk. And then if you have a little bit of drugs, it kind of sobers you up. And it, having ADHD, I have a very hard time with focusing and being present in a conversation. So I always be thinking something else while they're talking to me. My active listening was awful. So, doing a drug would kind of slow me down. and actually make me more talkative.
Mm.
So I found avenues to use to help me with that. And, I remember one time I'm walking across the Canby Street Bridge downtown, and a bartender earlier that night, he was an ex-addict that I worked with. He said, "Hey, man, do you drink too much?" And I'm like, "No, I'm 24. I like to have fun." But I asked myself that question walking home because I could close the bar up within 15 minutes and be out, where the other bartenders, it took them a while. But
Mhm.
I needed that drink so bad, I learned how to do it very quickly. So he recognized this, and he was an ex-alcoholic, and he told me why he didn't drink. But he asked me these questions, and I kind of got it off. Then walking home, I started asking myself these questions, and then the way I answered was like, "Oh, I'm too smart. I'm 24 years old. I like to have fun. I'm too smart to be an alcoholic." And I started correlating alcoholism with being a low life and being not normal. I'm like, can't be me. So that's not me.
Mhm.
Fast forward about 7 months, I'm back at home, living in Salmon Arm, a town of 18,000 people, where I reside today. And I still remember where we were driving. We are driving down a straight stretch, and the conversation of depression came up. And I looked at my buddy, and I'm like, "Yeah, you know what, man? Depression is an excuse. You got to man up. You got to go to work. You got to pay your bills. You don't have to talk about that stuff. It's for the weak people, right?"
Yep.
And I don't know why, and I do know why I said that. I never looked at myself as a man, and I kind of looked up to this guy, and I wanted to show him that I was a man. When you're trying to show people who you're not, and start wearing those masks. But right then and there, at 24 years old, I'm correlating alcoholism with being a low life, and I'm too smart for it, and then depression with being weak and an excuse, and you got to man up. And being man up is like you start to have this awful internal dialogue.
Mhm.
So, what were my two major problems? Alcohol and depression. So, at
Yep.
24, I'm ignoring them, pushing them aside, and then trying to live my life. But as time goes on, the alcohol and the drug is just timesing like by 10 what I feel like. Then I can't control it. I start losing jobs. I'm moving around. And at 28, I end up crashing a car. Um, my girlfriend was 3 months pregnant, or no, she was 6 months pregnant. So I'm like, okay, I gotta get out of town. I gotta go to rehab. So I went to rehab. But
Mhm.
when I was in rehab, I went to the gym twice a day. I was eating properly. I went to all my classes. But as soon as I got out, I'm like, you know what? I'm not done drinking. I'm just gonna take a break. So I went with the wrong mindset, and I came out with an even worse mindset, basically.
Right.
So we had our son, and then 6 months later, I was just spiraling down and down and down. She had to make the tough decision to leave me with our son because I wasn't a good environment to be around. It's not like I was abusive or anything, but you know what? I was an alcoholic.
Mhm.
I would black out, and she didn't want to be around that. She didn't know what to do, so she had to make the decision, and I don't blame her for it at all. But I ended up going down and down again. I had to take a leave of absence from work, and that's when I started to become very suicidal. So for 6 straight years, I didn't know if I was going to make it or what I was going to do, and I started to kind of make a plan, and I became an organ donor and milk thistle for my liver and kidney flush because I was preparing my body to give it to somebody that I thought deserved it because again I was I put everybody else on this pedestal ahead of me, and I always felt so low about myself. And one of the reasons was because I knew, at 28, I started trying to get help, right? But I would go on and off my meds. I wouldn't accept the help. I thought I could do it alone. If I quit drinking, I would go 1, 2, 3 months, and then I'd be like, okay, well, that guy can do it. I can do it.
Mhm.
Um, or I still take my meds because I don't need those. I don't need your help. I can do this alone. But it turns out I couldn't. So I become suicidal, and I started preparing my body to give it to somebody because I really thought my son was better off without me. I mean, there was times where I ended up in the hospital because I drank too much, and I'm hooked up to IV. I'm sweating. I'm pasty, and that was the second time I ended up in the hospital in 3 weeks from alcohol poisoning. My hands were numb. I couldn't keep water down. And my girlfriend or my ex brought in my son. And I'll never forget this. He looked at me, he looked at her, looked at me. He's like, Mommy, what's wrong with daddy? Right then and
Mm.
there, I started thinking, this kid's better off without me. He deserves a father that's going to be there for him. He's going to raise him, he's going to teach him the ways of life. He's going to take him to hockey. He's going to take him to school. He's not going to miss time because, he's drinking too much or he's too tired because he's depressed. And I'm like, you know what? Well, my parents, they'll understand if I end it. They don't want me to suffer. My ex, she's beautiful, smart, intelligent, funny. She's got a massive heart. She'll find someone for him, a good dad. And then for him, yeah, he's 3 years old. He's not going to remember me. So I got in that
Mm.
mindset of he is better off without me. And I used to think that suicide was the coward's way out. I remember I had a buddy whose father, he committed suicide, unfortunately. And like, I thought I was helping him by saying, hey, you know what, you're better than that. That's taking the coward's way out. I thought I was helping
Mhm.
him back then by
Mhm.
saying that. And when you go through it, it's hard to explain it. It's not like you want to die, but you just don't want to live. It's like this invisible pain that you have that you don't know if you're going to make it the next day. You don't know why you're like this. But then I'm feeling guilty and shameful because I knew every time I had a drink, every time I used a drug, I know it was my choice. I
Right.
chose to use that, even though I knew it was hurting other people. So then you're starting to live with the guilt and the shame. And, that's all starting to build up. And the difference between guilt and shame is guilt is you did something bad, where shame is you are bad. Like
Mhm.
you are a bad person. And then that starts to fire your internal dialogue. Like you're a failure, you're hopeless. And so all these things started to go on. I was very lucky I started working out at 28ish, and I started putting on motivational speaking on YouTube. And all these guys, like, who I had no idea who were at the time. It was Les Brown, Inky Johnson, Trent Shelton, and Eric Thomas. Now, they all, and I definitely know who they are now, but they all started talking about this find your why. So, okay, well,
Mm.
what is my why? Well, what's my why to go on? What's my why to inspire me? And I couldn't figure it out. And then finally I'm like, okay, what if I look at that little boy? I started looking at my son. I knew my capabilities. I know I have a big heart. I knew what I could do if I was better. So I'm like, well, what if I got better for him? Because a lot of people say, do it for yourself, do it for yourself. Well, you know what? I know a lot of guys that in rehab that they couldn't do it for themselves. That's why they're there.
Yep.
You gotta. A lot of guys were there for their kids. You got to find the reason. If you don't have kids, you find a reason to do it for. If you can't do it for yourself, there's got to be a reason out there. So I'm like, if I can do it for him, I can do it for me. If I do it for me, I can actually help other people. So that being said, I actually go back to rehab. But this time, instead of trying to quit drinking, I went with the power of why. So, no, why do I drink? Well, I'm depressed. Why am I depressed? Well, I have low self worth, low self esteem, low self confidence, and I compare myself. Well, why am I like that? Well, you know what? I didn't like who I was growing up. I never talked about it, and I didn't learn how to deal with it. So
Mhm.
with that, you figure out the how. Well, how am I going to get better? Well, a lot of it was, gratitude. Gratitude in the morning. We went over gratitude, mindfulness, positive affirmations, like mindfulness, get into your head, to get out of your head. Be present where you are. Just take a second to release all that stuff that's up floating up in your head. Just be mindful of the situation you're in, where you're at, what surrounds you. And with gratitude, be grateful for what you have. And my coach said, he's like, hey man, if you have a hard time with gratitude, attach a feeling to it. And that is, if you didn't have it tomorrow, how would you feel today? So it's attach a feeling to the gratitude, not just say I am grateful for. But then
Mm.
positive affirmations like the I am statements, like build yourself up. So I started being like, okay, I am strong, I am recovery, I am adversity, because I had gone through a lot in life. Like my girlfriend left me with my son in my darkest time. I watched my stepdad pass away while I was giving him CPR. My best friend, who checked in on me every single day, he actually passed away from addiction. And you know, so I got knocked down a lot, but I had to figure out, how am I going to get back up. So I started to journal. Journal my thoughts and my feelings. How was I feeling? Just get it down on paper is like half the battle, but just write one or two sentences to start if you can. Diet, I didn't really realize the importance of diet and how eating bad can, you know, make you think worse, because when I quit drinking, I crave sugar,
Mhm.
crave chocolate and 5-cent candies and baking, and it was crazy.
Mm.
Uh, exercise, get out and exercise just 30 minutes a day. I know a lot of people, like, I would hole up myself in a room for about 3 weeks, but just get out, go for a quick walk if you can. But the biggest thing I learned was, when you feel bad, talk about it.
Yep.
you know, it's that man up stigma, but you got to get rid of it because that man up stigma nearly took my life. So I built a team of support. I built a support network. So I've been to over 100 doctor's appointments. I've spent 77 days in rehab, 45 addiction appointments, 10 psychiatrists, 8 different medications from bipolar to anxiety to anger to sleeping, to antidepressants. But the one of the biggest things is I found that one why. But I also built that support network of people I could talk to, or that friend that will lend an ear to me when I just need to be heard. So I had to figure out the how, and I got out of rehab and I was doing very well. But then a pink cloud came in, and I had my son and I'm like, okay, I have to give him to my mom because I need a drink. And like, I didn't, in those 3 years that my girlfriend left, I only drank a couple times when I had my kid. I was like, don't drink when you have your son.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one was on a wedding that he was in the wedding party, but she came and picked him up. Another was on Father's Day. I had a couple drinks, but I gave him to my mom and I got drunk and then I went back down that rabbit hole. And then on January 4th, 2019, I told my stepdad or my mom, listen, you need to take me to the hospital. She's like, how come? I'm like, I'll tell you when we're there. And that's the day that, I ended up sitting in a hospital room in the middle on a bed. I had my dad to my left, my mom in front, and the counselor to the right. And I finally admitted out loud that, I had a plan and that the plan was to end it.
Mm-hmm.
And, it felt really good to say that out loud.
Yep.
But like on that same day, I turned my history into my future and my pain into my purpose. And ever since then, I'm 28 months sober or something like that. And done a couple speaking certifications, a couple coaching certifications. And, I've got to speak around and talk about mental health and addiction. And, if you would have asked me as a kid or would have said, hey, Justin, you're going to be depressed. You're going to be suicidal. You're going to be an addict. I would have looked and would have, whatever, would have
Mm-hmm.
laughed at them. For one, I was a teenager and I don't think I listened to anybody.
Yep.
Or I did listen to anybody as a kid, teenager, or a young adult because, I thought I knew everything.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do it myself. But the best thing I ever did was ask for help and face the problem head on.
Yeah.
And you know what? Now, 3 years later, I'm back together with my girlfriend. We have another one on the way. I got my kid's first puck from his first goal because I got to coach him in hockey. So I get to coach him in baseball now. And, everything I thought I wouldn't get to do, I get to do now. And when I had to ask myself one time, I was having a really rough day that day. And I was crying. I was looking at the back of my son's head. I'm like, am I going to make team score his first goal, to teach him how to ride a bike, to graduate, or see him get married? The answer was no. It was inevitably no. And then I said he's better off without me. But now I get to do all those things, and it's getting pretty surreal now that I look back and see where I was to where I am now, and it's like when you're in that world, it's almost like a fantasy world.
Mm-hmm.
And to look back, it's pretty humbling. But to know that I get to give back and speak to people on the power of addiction, but not only power of addiction is the problem. Usually why you're an addict is there's deeper underlying issues.
Mm-hmm.
And to realize like, holy okay, I had depression, I have anxiety, and what do you do to cope with that? Well, drugs and alcohol can help, but they can also amplify it.
Yeah. Well, where do I start, man? Well, first I just wanted to say, man, like congrats, because that is a really inspiring story, and also one that, we a lot of people go through and that no one talks about. So it's really great that, you went through it and now you can speak to people about these things. 'Cause especially as men, we don't talk about this stuff. Um I I kind of went back to my journey when you were telling your story, like in my head, when you were talking about your why, because they always tell you your why has to be you. And from someone outside looking in, it's so easy to say that, because it's the obvious answer. Like, obviously you want to get better because you want, like, it has to be for you. When I was like at the lowest I ever was, like after my last attempt to end my life, my why wasn't me. It wasn't, I wasn't the reason I wanted to get better. It was my family, it was my friends. But over time, through the recovery process, you start to re-love yourself and you
Hmm.
realize, oh, now my why is them, but also me. So if don't be ashamed if you're listening, don't be ashamed if like your why isn't you. Because at the beginning, like a lot of us don't have that why. We don't there's a reason we're at the point we're at.
Hmm. Well, and you know what people don't realize is that, when you make your why, even if I made my why my son, but it came back, it turned out to be getting me healthy.
Hmm.
So if you get better for something else, you essentially are getting better for yourself.
Right.
But you need to find that thing that's going to motivate and inspire you to get better, because I think I know that when you fall out of love with yourself,
Mm.
it's very hard to rise back up in it.
Yep.
And I am just starting to meet at 36 years old. I'm just starting to meet the man that I knew I could be,
Hmm.
and to go a lifetime without knowing that, it was pretty crazy. But
Yeah.
it's it's when you start to hate yourself, it makes it even more. It makes it even tougher to get out of it. But
Man.
it's doable.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the other thing. That's why your why isn't you, because for me, it was like 10 years of convincing myself I was garbage. So it's like you can't just all of a sudden like, oh, I love myself now. Like it's not like that. It's not that easy. I wish it was that easy because I
Yeah,
wouldn't have
no,
gone
and
through
you know
everything.
what? That's why it's called recovery, because it's not just a one trick pony. It's see, okay, and that's why I kept falling, because if you stop doing your self care, if you stop implementing what you've been taught, you can start to fall again. Like, you got to do this kind of stuff every day, whether it's a little bit at a time. Baby steps is fine, but I mean, for one, give yourself some grace to be human. You're gonna have bad days. You're gonna fail. You're gonna get tested. You're gonna get knocked down. But it's how you react to those. Be like, hey, you know what? Oh, I laid in bed today. Well, okay, good. You made it.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a win. Boom. Did you eat? Even better.
Yeah.
Did you
There you go.
shower? Oh, you're 100% winning. 'Cause I don't know how many times I went a week or two without showering, without leaving my room.
Yep.
So if you have those days where you get up and watch a movie or you shower, that's a win sometimes, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Seriously. Yeah. There was one point where I went 3 weeks and I would eat like just bread. That was it because I couldn't stomach anything else. And I just locked myself in my room,
Yeah.
didn't leave. Oh, what a terrible time, man.
Oh,
You
dude,
know,
I would do that and drink
that's even, oh my God, man.
and
Like
do cocaine by myself
yeah,
and then
no,
watch
you like,
Grey's
you look,
Anatomy.
yeah, grief.
So, I don't say that to many people.
You just admitted it globally.
I did.
No, but yeah, man. Like looking back, you just kind of go like, wow, you know. I bet you do it all the time. Yeah, I do it
Yeah.
sometimes. I'll
Okay.
sit.
So,
Yeah.
to be honest, yeah. So I actually took a social media vacation,
Hmm.
because when I got out of the hospital 6 months later. I'm back working in a restaurant. Why? Because I was a good bartender, really good bartender. But what would that restaurant do? It would make me have conversations with people. It would get me out of my comfort zone.
Right.
Plus, I would make good money and I could go to school to do my coaching and my speaking certifications and be with my family during the day. So I got out. I went straight to work. I got back together with my family. So I had people in my day, and I'm used to being by myself. Like, I've spent more days alone than I have with other people, even living back together with my girlfriend for over a year.
Hmm.
Um, and then I went to school. Then I started coaching. Then I started volunteering. Then I started speaking to where, holy cow. And then I started getting on podcasts. And then you tell your story, and it just gets more real as it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah.
So, like I said before, yeah, it was like a fantasy back then. Now it's more of a reality. So I actually took some time away. My last clients graduated. I took some time away just to, allow myself to feel,
Hmm.
acknowledge that, holy cow, Justin, this is still fresh. This is 2 years ago. Um, that, okay, you know what? This is how far you came, but it does get more real now that I'm
Yeah.
out of it.
Yeah. Do
Because,
you? Sorry,
go
go
on.
for it.
Yeah, because the farther you get away from it, the more you realize and the more you talk about it. So I had to take a little bit of a social media break just to kind of get collected again.
Mm-hmm. I would. So, do you personally find that making it more real made it easier to tackle? Because for me, um, the like I would have all these thoughts for a decade, and like I convinced myself of all these things, and the idea of recovery was just impossible to wrap my
Yeah.
head around. And then when I remember, I will never forget the first time I like openly said like, "Hey, I want to kill myself," to someone, because that like let it out. And then
Yeah.
it seemed like, okay, it's possible to tackle this now because I made it real, as opposed to like this fantasy beast that was floating in my head.
Yeah. No. Um, I remember I used to like. I know this sounds bad, but I used to beg to get cancer so I didn't have to do it myself.
Mm, yeah.
And because you don't want to have to put your family in that situation almost to where they'd understand if you kind of you got the cancer.
Right.
But when you start to really believe what you're saying about yourself, that can really make or break you. And that's my internal dialogue got really bad. It's like you are a
Mm-hmm.
failure, you're hopeless. And yeah, that the part of recovery, you look at that, it's like that's why they call it the pink cloud when you get out of recovery, because you're great, you did all these changes, and then 3 months later, holy cow, I gotta keep this up.
Yeah.
But then you're surrounded with social media and negativity, and like I start to block people, like I'm still friends with them, but I block them on my social media if I just don't like their content. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be around that. I don't need that surrounding me, because you know what, I can't, I built myself up enough healthy coping mechanisms. I have a good support network. I've learned a lot through coaching and speaking, but I can still get sad and depressed. I can still have self-doubt creep in. I can still compare myself sometimes, and I can sometimes still see that skinny kid I saw in high school. So it's removing yourself from those situations, preparing yourself for those situations, because you know what, you're gonna get those unwanted thoughts. So when those thoughts come in, you challenge them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, but what I wanted to talk to you about was like something that I call my 3 A's, and the steps that I use to get better is so first you admit the problem, which is usually is pretty hard, right? Like I couldn't admit that I was an alcoholic, or depressed, I was running away from it. Then you have to accept it, and then you have to ask for help. So you got to admit the problem is whatever that you're facing. You got to accept it internally, that holy cow, this is the truth for me. And then you got to ask for help. So I admitted it. I thought I accepted it, and then I asked for help. But then every time I said I felt better, I'd stop taking my meds or go to the counseling, or I'd have one more drink and two, and then I'd end up missing time at work or with my son. But the acceptance part, I learned that in rehab, and then I learned it in coaching too. The
Mm-hmm.
acceptance part is huge. So yeah, admit the problem. And it might be tough because you're going to have to look for the answers that you don't want to hear. Then you have to accept it, because this is a reality for you, this is in your life. And then you got to ask for help, because you do not have to do it alone. It is easier to do life with somebody else. And I don't know if you ever heard of William H. McRaven. He's a Navy SEAL who had this badass commencement speech.
No, I haven't.
um, it's unreal. And he talks about, first of all, don't ever ring that bell, because you
Mm-hmm.
will regret it. So that Navy SEAL or bell they have in the middle of the compound where it says I quit,
Mm.
and then you get to leave Navy SEAL training, and that will always ring true to me. Don't ever ring that bell. But I bought his book, and it says, so he's a Navy SEAL. He's creme de la creme. They're the toughest of the toughest. They can do anything. They can kill you with a paperclip, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, Actually, I could probably kill myself somehow with a paperclip. Like
Yeah.
who
Seriously.
knows? I'm so accident prone. But he talks about this one chapter, and it really, really opened up my eyes, because I always say, don't do life alone, ask for help. But when I saw this, this Navy SEAL, he talks about he split his pelvis apart in a parachute accident. His parachute didn't pull open, I think. And then he had to get the other one open, but it wrapped around his leg and it pulled his pelvis apart.
Oh God.
I know. So he said, though, the biggest part of his recovery was his friends messaging
Mm-hmm.
him, his friends stopping by, his wife, and his even like general calling him to see how he was doing. So you got this badass Navy SEAL that talks about asking for help and not doing it alone. And that just kind of reaffirmed it for me. And and that's the final part of the three A's.
Mm-hmm.
Ask for help.
Yeah. What which A do you think is the hardest to
Acceptance.
tackle? Acceptance, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I have a signature speech, and in that I talk about my three A's, and I talk about admitting, accepting, and asking for help. But at the bottom of it, I go back the acceptance part,
Mm-hmm.
because I had to accept that, hey, Justin, I'll never say I can't. You shouldn't drink.
Right.
Justin, you shouldn't do this alone. Right? You need help. So I had to go back and accept it. And once I finally started to accept that I shouldn't drink and that I needed help, that's when I really started to make change. But it's there's other levels of acceptance. There's accept your past, accept the decisions you've made, accept the things that you've done, accept your choices. Also, if someone has ever wronged you, you have to accept it, because it actually happened. You can't change it. It's real.
Mm-hmm.
Accept it. Doesn't mean you have to like it, though. Doesn't mean you have to like it. But then you gotta forgive. So 1 week was acceptance and forgiveness. So you don't have to. The thing about forgiveness is and acceptance is they're both for you.
Yeah.
So when you go to forgive somebody, you don't have to forgive them to their face. They don't even have to know you forgive them. But you gotta forgive them internally,
Mm-hmm.
because you cannot create your future by staring in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. I obviously won't I won't drop any names, but I had to do a lot of that during the pandemic. A lot of
Yeah.
forgiveness and acceptance of what happened in prior to everything.
Mhm.
Some shit hit the fan in my life, and for a
Yeah.
while it ate at me. Wow, I can't speak. It ate at me for a while. It would come out in like angry outbursts and stuff, and then through the pandemic, I just had to take time. And like the thing is, it's not an easy thing. Like I'm sure like
Mhm.
it's not easy to accept or to forgive
Oh,
people,
no.
especially because like you're forgiving for yourself, but a little part of you is like they win if I forgive them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know that's where you really got to change your thought patterns.
Yeah,
Like, well, I'm going to be the winner of this. But the thing is you don't have to go back and hang out with them.
right,
And also, the
exactly.
one thing I did learn in coaching is all behavior makes perfect sense. So there's a
Hmm.
reason why people act the way they do. Like, this will stick with me. Maybe they're not taking. Maybe they have a mental health issue. Maybe they're not taking their meds. Maybe they lost a child or a loved one. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they're having money issues. Maybe they broke up with their spouse and they're lashing out. But maybe, just maybe, people don't understand what you're going through,
Right.
and they're uncomfortable with it. So what I had to learn was don't take things personally. And I went through a time where I'm like, well, why doesn't this guy want to talk to me about this? Right, when I'm struggling. Well, it's because he doesn't understand it. It just makes him uncomfortable.
Hmm.
So I had to be like, okay, he's not being a dick. Sorry.
No, you can swear. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, he's not being a jerk. He doesn't know how to deal with what I'm going through because he never went through it, or maybe he's one of those man up guys. Like, I had a friend who actually told me to man up, grow up, and another
Yep.
friend say, hey, don't talk to me unless you go to work.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that hurt. Like, I was thinking of ending my life and how I could do it, and I didn't know what to do because you feel so helpless. Like, you try antidepressants, they don't work. You try going to counseling, and 3 months later you're still suicidal every day. It sucks, right? But they they don't understand what you're going through,
Yeah.
and they actually think maybe, okay, maybe if I say this, I might be helping them. Or you know what, they could care so much that it angers them to see what you're going through,
Yes.
see what you're going through, and they know that you deserve better.
Hmm.
And I know it's a hard way to look at that, because that's not what you want to hear. You want to die? Oh, man up, bud. Oh, you want to die? Okay, just go to work.
You're like,
It's,
I'm trying, man.
yeah, and yeah, but it's, you can see that there's some people that care about you so much that they're so angry that you're hurting yourself that they don't know how to deal with it.
Yep.
Right. So now I actually had a friend who phoned me and said, can I apologize to you? And I said, why? He said, well, I thought you were faking it. I'm like, what? He's like, what you're going
Wow.
through, I thought you were faking it because I'm so good at wearing that mask. He's like, you're smart, you're
Yeah.
funny, people like you. He's like, but I'm going through it.
Mm.
Yeah. So he started going through it. Okay, what can I do for you? And you know what? You text them. Like I had buddies that got mad at me because I wouldn't answer their texts, but I had one or two buddies that would text me every day, and if I didn't answer, they'd be like, "Whatever, we'll text you the next day." Text you the next day. Just keep texting them, because if you're gonna get mad at someone who's giving up on themselves, it's hard. You just keep that, be there to support them, and with the intent to listen and not to fix.
Yeah. That's a big problem. That like I'm not innocent for it either. Like when my friends go through something, you care about them so much, like you said, that you try to step in because from the outside looking in, you know the answer to their issue. You're like
Yeah,
let's say it's a bad relationship. You're like, well, just break up with them because they're toxic.
yeah,
Or if they're like depressed, it's like, well, therapy might help, or this might help, or that might help. Or if they're going through something, but when you're in it, like the last thing you want to hear is someone telling you this is what
yeah.
you have to do. Because then your ego plays a part and you're like, man, shut up.
Yeah, and you know what? I have the exact same situation. Like that same friend that called me
Hmm.
is, he's battling addiction. And it's a drug and not alcohol, but he still wants to keep drinking because he wants to be normal. Now,
Yeah.
I used to think that way too. Like, okay, if I don't drink, I'm not normal. They're normal, I'm not. So why am I putting alcohol on a pedestal like this? Like, why do you have to be normal to drink?
Yeah.
What's normal about drinking, what hurting your body with a substance? Like, I'm not against drinking. Like, don't get me wrong. I can't do it, or I shouldn't do
Right.
it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, but he still wants to drink, and I'm like, hey, how can I support you? How can I support you? And be like, hey, you shouldn't drink, but what can I do for you? It's not like, hey man, you gotta put that alcohol down or you're in blah 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 blah. It's like coming at a point like that, they're like, whatever, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to.
I,
It's hard to come at a point of understanding
yes.
when you just want to wring their neck. And like I'm sure a
Yeah.
lot of friends wanted to do to me.
Yeah. Oh man, me too. I had friends who were like, I had friends who said, honestly, I don't even know what to say anymore. They're like, I've said it all and you're not listening. It's like, well, I'm listening. It's just not registering because my ego's in the
Yeah,
way.
well, it's hard work, man, to to get out of uh, get out of a state like that. It is very hard work, but it's worth it.
Yep. Yep.
But if you don't see light at the end of the tunnel, what do? You keep walking.
Exactly. I wanted to ask you when we're talking about, cuz you were talking about how when you were going through it and then you kind of got out of it doing your recovery, it felt like you walked out of this fantasy kind of feeling or like fantasy world. I felt the same way, and when I look back, like when I was really low and I wanted to end my life, and it was like I think the scariest part in my recovery, and I'm sure you can relate as well, and I'm sure people listening can. The scariest part was when I started accepting that I wouldn't be here much longer, and like
Yeah.
I would look forward to it. Like if like an inconvenience happened in my life, I was like, well, that's okay because I won't have to worry about it much longer. Or I would be like with the swim team that I was on, and I would look around and be like, yeah, they're gonna enjoy themselves a little more in a couple weeks. Like thoughts like that. But I remember the one thing I can't put into words when people ask me how it felt was the loneliness. Because I had so many friends and I have a great family, and like everything was going right for me on the outside, I guess. But that loneliness, I don't know how to put that into words. I don't know how to describe it.
Well, you know what? When people ask me, when I explained to them how I felt, it's you're lonely, but you want to be alone.
Hmm.
You're scared, but you're mostly confused. And how I felt was imagine having a little brother or a kid or a family member choking on something. Now the mouth is open and you can see it, but it's like a dream and you can't grab it.
Right.
So you can't save them. That's what I felt like.
Yeah. Yeah. It
You know.
felt like It felt like my life was like a train or something, and at the end of the train track, there was nothing. It was just like a hill or like it was gonna fall down, and I was standing on the side watching it go. I wasn't in the train. I was just like, "Oh, there goes my life," and you felt
Hmm.
like, "Oh, there's nothing I could do about it."
One thing I heard one day was Ed Milet said, "I don't want to die and meet the man I could have been."
Oh god. That's heavy.
So I started to think about that.
Mm,
Well, who can I be? What is my why? Who can I be? And for once in my life, I'm actually doing the things that I say I'm going to do.
yeah, yep. Man, I was talking to like I recorded with this girl. Her name's Hazel, and she's kind of like a she works with your inner child. Like she does a bunch of
Mm.
stuff, and I got a session with her, and she was telling me like just based on the session, she was like, "You were always looking for a big brother," and like it hit me different because that was like the best way I could ever describe it, but I was never able to because I'm the big brother in my family. I never had that role model about like well like I have my dad of course, but like in terms of like emotions and like when you go to the schoolyard or the swimming pool, like I didn't have anyone to look up to. So I was kind of alone in that regard. So when she said like be the big brother that your younger you would have wanted, that changed everything. I was like that put it into perspective.
Yeah, no, that's good. I look back on it now, and I wish I would have had that role model too. Like I
Yeah.
had a really good dad, really good mom, but I needed, I didn't listen. Like I needed a little, maybe a little harder on me a little bit, but just be there to ask me how I'm actually doing.
Yep.
There's a reason why, like, I was smart enough to get straight A's probably, but I didn't study, I didn't do homework, and my grades would drop because I
Mhm.
skipped. But I was definitely smart enough to get straight A's if I would have tried, or even if I would have had, yeah, like the classes I went to, I'd get A's in usually, or if I paid attention.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that role model to look up to, or that person like, hey, this is why you got to do what you got to do. I believe in at a very young age, like I'm instilling in my kid. He's 5. Hey, keep on trying. You're not good at something, keep on trying. At the beginning of the hockey year, he could barely skate. At the end, he was probably getting the most goals out of his age group.
Nice.
Because I'd be like, keep on trying. How do you get better? Keep on trying. And when I drop him off to school, hey, what are you going to do today? Listen and have fun
I love
every
it.
day.
Yep.
And I tell him about hard work, but I also tell him about being kind to everybody,
Mhm. Yeah.
like treating everybody good. And the kid has a massive heart. So I think instilling good values and beliefs in kids is very big.
Yeah. 1,000%. Actually, on that topic, when there's like this, it's not really a big debate, but like if you talk to people, it's kind of a back and forth about, you know, with kids, they don't learn about mental health struggles or mental illness or addiction or anything like that. Like I didn't know what the word I legit did not know what the word depression was until I got diagnosed in when I was 19. I was like, what is that? Like you're just not taught
Yeah.
it. And so the argument is we should instill that knowledge of how to deal with these things in kids, but the counter argument is, it's not age appropriate. Like when you talk about things at depth. So how do you talk in an age appropriate manner with your son about these things?
Oh man, like he's so intuitive. How do you how do you get up to see God? I don't know.
You're like, man, I don't know. I'll let you know when I find out.
Yeah. Well, some people go to visit them when they pass away, and
Yeah.
he's seen cartoons and stuff, so I think he kind of gets it, but he doesn't know the gist of it. Like, but it's the other day, how did that baby get in mom's belly? Oh my god!
Mm, the great
So
question.
those are all questions I'm still exploring. I don't have an answer for that. I think what, when the time is right, it will feel right. Don't wait till they're 16. I would say don't wait
Yeah.
till it's too old. Um, you know, I wish I would have known about mental health at a very young age. In rehab, what we went over was gratitude, mindfulness, affirmations for a week, guilt and shame for a week, anger and stress for a week. acceptance and forgiveness for another week. And I forget one more thing. We went through something else, but just if you could teach those things, well, how to deal with anger, what gratitude is, you know, what vulnerability is, accepting life as it is, because life will shoot you lessons that you're not going to like, right? And you got to
Yep.
sometimes take one on the chin.
Mm-hmm.
And, they teach you about this at a younger age, and that, hey, like, it's okay to be sad.
Yep.
You're going to get sad, but okay, why are you sad? Talk to me about it. Come to me. I'll try to pry it out of them. Be like, hey, you okay? Having conversations with them.
Yeah. 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 A conversation format's kind of the best way to go about it. I feel like, I mean, when I was a kid, and I would be sad or something, the the number one question I'd always get from like people I looked up to or role models was like, "What's wrong with you?" And it's like, how responsive are you going to be to that question? Like, man, what do you
Nothing.
want me to?
Nothing. I'm
Yeah,
fine.
like nothing. Look at me. I'm great.
I'm awesome. What's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. What's wrong with you for asking that? Like that's the
Yeah.
young ego coming out. You're like, no.
Oh man, you know what? I saw where were we? My kid fell down. Oh, at the skate park. He
Hmm.
fell down the cement right on his tailbone. And he was like making all these funny faces, trying so hard. And he didn't cry, but I could totally he wanted to. Like, but
Yep.
he almost looked like he had to poop.
Yeah.
He's
Oh my
making so
god.
many faces, but and that's when it comes to putting on the masks,
Hmm.
the inner versus the outer feeling, the mask of deception.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough one because it's instilled like in the kids so early. Like not just with cartoons and stuff, but like playground bullies and things. Like you show emotion and you're immediately like targeted. Like I cried once on the playground in like grade 2 and it was over. Like that was it.
Yeah. I used to when I was in grade 8, I'd kind of pick on the grade 10s almost, but they
Mm,
would catch me really quick. Throw me in the garbage can, throw me in the locker, give me purple nurples.
yeah, the good stuff.
Yeah. But, I even, I tried to dress nice, and I was outgoing, and, I had this nickname gay in high school, and that really bothered me. I never
Yeah.
said anything about it to other people, but, that really bothered me because the way in high school, geez, 20 years ago, maybe, yeah, 20 years ago, I was 16. I didn't know any. The way you'd look at, someone of that stature is you'll kind of almost look down on them, right? Like they're
Yep.
different. Now I was the best man at a gay wedding,
Mhm.
but like, to be called that, it really hurt my feelings. I'm like, well, that also makes me not normal, and it's the things that you take with you as a kid into your adult life.
Yep. Yeah,
And
exactly.
I've heard a lot more about this inner child work from getting into this mental health space, this coaching space, and meeting other people. You learn a lot more. Like I've heard a lot about this inner child. Like get in touch with your inner child, and it's a lot of mine stems from my childhood. I just taking it with me, taking the baggage, and packing that luggage and never, getting it checked.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, kind of wrapping things up a little bit here. Uh, for people who do want to start either doing that inner child work or finding that why or just getting the recovery they need or want, where should they start right now?
Well, first admit what is your problem. Okay, so
Mhm.
what am I facing? What's in front of me right now that I'm really having a hard time with?
Yep.
Okay, that, and then accept it. Okay, that's real. Okay, so what should I do next? Well, I got to ask for help. Well, now you got to find out who you should ask for help. Maybe all you have to do is just do a Google search. Your local health authorities, Canadian Mental Health Association, or wherever you are in the world, just your local health authorities, right? Or association. Um, go to your general doctor.
Mhm.
Reach out to a friend. They might know somebody, but just get it off your chest. Find somebody that you can talk to about it first, and then make that first call. Take your baby steps if you need to, but make sure you don't bottle it in,
Yep.
right? Because I bottled it in and it almost took my life.
Mhm.
realizing that you are somebody, even if you don't feel like it. There's always somebody that wants you here.
Yeah.
And you got to find that why. If you can't do it for yourself, find that why that's going to inspire you, going to motivate you. I don't care if it's a role model, it's a hero of yours, like, a mentor. Find somebody or something. I don't care if it's your cat. Find it.
Mm-hmm.
It's out there. You got to search. Take a note. Write in a journal. Gratitude. They're not. These are all steps, but they're easy steps.
Right.
They sometimes it may seem big, right? Like, but I didn't realize like I'd been to over 100 doctor's appointments and 45 addiction appointments over 6 years. It's a lot. And 77 days in rehab, 10 psychologists, but it was baby steps, and then it accumulates over time, like the compound effect for the penny, right?
Yep, exactly.
Keep doubling it. So, it all adds up. So just start small, start where you're comfortable, but don't stay in your comfort zone for too long.
Yeah. Oh, great advice.
So,
yeah, absolutely. And then kind of finishing on this note, excuse me, if you could teleport back to you at your lowest point, like the very lowest that you were, what would be one thing that you would want to say to yourself?
love yourself enough to ask for help.
Yeah. I love it.
And someone is like, what would you say to yourself as a kid? Love yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
Because the better you are for you, the better you are for people.
Yeah.
You can do so much of filling other people's buckets up, but if your bucket's getting drained, you have only so much to give.
Exactly. Love it, man. Where can my viewers find you?
Instagram, just Justin Brien 19. I have a website, www.justinbrien.com. If people want to take I have a personal development program. It's called the Stronger You Project. And it's like I did my coaching, but it's kind of different. It's like we're going to go over self-limiting beliefs, go over self-confidence, roadblocks, triggers, procrastination, healthy boundaries, finding your why.
Mm-hmm.
The most important part of my modules, it's in every single module though, is what are 3 things you love about yourself? It's pretty tough because, I love my son. Because he's the man. He lights my light up. I love my girlfriend because, she's just a massive heart. Oh, so what do I love about me? Right?
Yeah.
So it's trying to get people to say, I love me. And, but you also get homework, you get an accountability sheet, and it's just us working together for those 12 weeks and to become the stronger you. But you can find me there, just Justin Brien on Facebook, or just reach out to me on any of those platforms. Just let me know what you thought or what your biggest takeaway is. I'd love to hear it.
Awesome, man. I'll put all those links down below. Justin, thank you again for coming on, brother. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much for having me.
And to all my viewers, I will see you guys next time.